Hello, this is Katie. Welcome back to my channel. This is day 21 of a video every day in May. I may just make it yet. I'm using the new Lawn Fawn set, Smooth Sailing. I have a card base, the 5.5 by 4.25. These gold dies you see in the background are actually the dies I was talking about yesterday that I did not show you. So I have just a piece of flat cardstock that is 1/8 of an inch shorter all the way around. So I just cut out a circle in the upper middle, and I'm going to set that circle aside for something else. I'm not using that on the card. So I just wanted to cut a hole. And then I'm actually going to, before I forget, because I usually do this at the wrong time or forget until it's not a great situation to stamp this, I'll be stamping the Wishing You Smooth Sailing onto that cardstock piece and then setting that aside. And I think I'll actually submit this card for the Spectacular Skies, the Lawn Fanatics Challenge. I think that's what it's called. And you will see why. So I'm going to just be coloring in these images. I'm using another red combination that I have not before. So you'll see those 3 reds here. And it isn't a whole lot of space, but I made sure to leave just enough so I could have a third blending out color here. And then I'm getting into more of these orangey reds, which I'm liking. It's a nice, bright, lightest blending color option. And then I'm going to use the colorless blender. I went into the white spaces a little bit, so I'm just kind of trying to erase that. I'm going to use C5 and C3 for just the rest of it, including the doorway, to blend that out. Sorry, I don't have a whole lot to talk about while I'm coloring. And I don't have music going on in the background. I'm just using one yellow on the stars as opposed to blending them out. I do add some white accents onto the stars later just to give them a little something. And then I decided the rabbit was probably a little too small. He probably isn't, but I just wanted to use 2 colors. So I picked another 2-color combo that I don't use a lot, and I think that worked out for him. I end up adding little cheeks and white dots to him at the end, just to give him a little something more. And then I just chose a random pink to dot his nose. It is very, very small, and you can't even see it, really. So I just grabbed one that was on top, but I didn't even notice any pink filling in there. And then I'm going to be doing a blue sky and using some blue paper as well. So I figured orange would go with that a little bit, since I'm pretty sure they complement each other. I was going to do a green boat. I went from blue to green to orange, and I landed on orange. I do use some blue in the sails, and the blending I do here on the sails is actually, it's not enough for me. It just looks like one solid light blue. So I end up adding a darker blue to it later and then blending it out again. Then I just picked a couple browns to be what I would consider the wood parts of the boat. And then I'm using the lightest blue that I have is this one. It's B000 for the clouds, and then the colorless blender to diffuse that out so it's not so sharp of a line. So just to give the clouds some hint of blue. That's a good trick to do that if you just want a little hint of something and you only want to use one marker and your colorless blender. And then I didn't want to restamp my clouds, so I just fixed that with a fine black Sharpie pen that that top cloud just didn't stamp fully on the top part. So on the sail, I'm using B01 and B00, my next two darkest blues from my lightest. But they just kind of look the same to me, so I fix this later. I just have to think about it while I'm doing other things for the card, and then I come back to it with B12, and then I blend it out with B00 again, and it gives it a little bit more shading. And then that fifth star just stamped a little too thick for me, so I didn't color it in. I'm not going to be using it. And so these two blues here, I show you which two markers I'm using a couple times. You can tell one's more navy and one is more blue. This is actually what I'm going to be using for my background. I didn't want this to become a thing, but I cannot stop making my backgrounds with Copics. I just really am not feeling the Distress Oxides or Distress Inks or blending with foam pads. The box I keep them in smells awful. It smells like a stale, smoky old house, and it makes me ill. And I just think this looks really cool. So I'm going to, since this top panel is going to be lifted up on foam, I am making sure I tape off the edges that are going to show, as well as a little bit extra, so I can just work within that. And then it doesn't really matter in the end, but I do make a little mistake here, and I don't tape off the bottom. I just tape off, you know, kind of where the circle ends, maybe a little past there, and I just work within this area, and I don't even go all the way to the bottom. But I do use some of my Gansai Tambi watercolors. I use the gold one. I'm going to add some gold flecks to this sky background, and I accidentally get some gold like near the bottom of the card, and it was not covered, but I don't think it shows through that much. So I decided that the navier blue would blend over on top of the more denim blue, ultramarine. And so that's what I ended up doing, just to give it kind of a fade. It always looks a little rough, but then when you lift up the tape or you put down the circle, it looks really nice in the background. So I've been liking making my skies or my grass lately out of Copics. So now I'm going into my Gansai Tambi watercolor, and I have a little dish of water to the right of me. It takes me a minute, and I might pause during this process. I can't remember, but it takes me a while to realize I'm going to need a lot more water than I have mixed in, because I go to take the paintbrush and try and tap from above, like now, and nothing is coming off. I think the paint is just too thick, so then I have to like water it down. I'm really trying to get it off the paintbrush. Once I do water it down, I'm not gonna lie, I do not like this paint at all. It is putting flecks on there. They're very, very tiny. That's not why though. I made a set of cards, like a set of 20 cards or so with this stuff, and it just smells like metal or like copper pennies or blood. I don't know. I just go straight to blood. I just can't. I hate that smell, and it's terrible. And so it gets everywhere. It was flicking up onto me, like onto my chest and my hands. So when I was tapping it, it wasn't just going down, it was like flicking everywhere. And so I kind of just left it at that. And I let this air dry. I didn't use my heat gun or anything. I was trying to add like little tiny white stars. They ended up looking like blobs. It really doesn't matter in the long run, but I added a bunch of tiny white dots as well. And I'm trying to add stars. But yeah, the paint, and so I take a break. I pause to wipe up all the mess that it caused around it. I think I already paused for that, so we probably missed that part. And wipe off myself. But you can see the smears I have along the bottom, and I was worried that that was gonna, I'm trying to hold this over to see if it's gonna show up. But anyway, I just trimmed off the sides of the blue piece, and then I'm gonna stick that down. I'll just put some tape runner on the back and then hold that water from behind where I want it, and then just pinch it to stick that down. Then I decide that my lighthouse is going to need like a sandbank or something to sit on. It can't just be behind the water in the sky. I needed to give it some dimension. So I went and cut that out just of a piece of scrap paper, and I'm going to do the same thing, just move this around where I think I want it. It ends up being just kind of rounded, and I turn it a little bit. So I'm just going to hold it there and trim from behind so that the pieces don't show in the front. And then I'll stick that down just like I stuck down the water from behind. These are all going to be lifted up on foam tape anyway. So then I stick that down, and I'm going to set that aside. I think I'm thinking about the scene and the layout, and then I decide to actually stick the background up on foam tape next after I fix my sails. So I'm just adding some B12, which is like one shade darker blue than B01 on my chart of markers that I own. And then I think, oh, I'm using B000, the lightest one, so I don't reblend it into the same blue again, just to give it some more depth. So then I'm going to run, I'm going to put foam tape all over the back of this to support it, and then stick that down to the card base. I realized that the 2 layers of the blue and the brown cardstock have probably caused it to be a little bumpy or a little taller. It works out just fine though, so making sure I have my sandbank lifted up as well, and then just cutting these thinner to go around the edges. I'm just trying to use up the last of my thinner foam tape because I have that wide roll that I got more recently. And that should be enough. And then I pause while I take all those off because that's boring. And so then I'm just centering that and sticking it down. And I was scraping off some left behind die cut trimmings, crumbs. So now I'm just kind of laying it out. I don't do this often. I've been doing it more lately because I've been planning cards to make videos for, but I'm trying to lay this out where I want them, and I'm going to glue them down piece by piece. So I don't show you me gluing them down. I do put foam tape on the back side of the upper half of the lighthouse, and then on the back side of the upper half of the boat so that they are supported. And then I just put glue on the bottom part. So I think I didn't show you that. And what you also missed was me tilting the card and having all of the stars fall into behind the sandbank, which freaked me out because I thought they were stuck. I got them all out safely, but then I decided to have them not on the card anymore, so it didn't happen again. And so now I am just picking them up from outside the card, just putting a blob of glue on there and sticking them down. Where I had planned them to be. And then I spend a little bit of time with my white pen doing some accents. And if I go off of the screen, I'm having to tap the ink down to the tip. It's been doing that to me lately, just not giving me the ink. Here's where I give him little cheeks. I'm trying to hold it down longer. I didn't want to use a really dark pink. I just wanted to give him something, and then I added little white dots for those because I think that's cute. And then I'm adding white accents. I'm kind of like outlining next to the black on the stars. I think that actually turned out really cool. I think I've seen some images that people have colored where I'm pretty sure that's what they did. Like lined right next to the black in the white pen. So I thought that looked really cool. So yeah, I think that's it. If you want to see more videos for the rest of May, subscribe and hit the notifications bell, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.